Thanks everyone for joining this webinar, which is going to be around travel experience technologies and everything that is related to the topic. Today, we have an extraordinary panel, which is composed by Sarah Dietz, who's Viator's Chief Commercial Officer. I think, as everyone knows, Viator is one of the major OTA in the world. And Sarah leads the team that works with suppliers and thousands of distribution partners all over the world. She has been also serving as CEO in the past for a quite well-known company called Antenna International. And at the time, she was leading the organization to be one of the largest provider of mobile content for cultural institutions around the world. And then we have Mark Wieland, who's co-founder and chief executive officer at Palaces. I think also Palaces is a very well-known company in our space, is a leading technology provider for sales and operations, supporting different tourism and transportation businesses around the world with, I think right now, hundreds and hundreds of customers in over hundreds of destinations around the globe. And then last but not least, we have pleasure of having also Griffin Henbury, who's a travel veteran who's been working with many different companies, very well-known travel companies in the past, such as GTA and Expedia, and is right now a chief executive officer at Greyline Worldwide. Greyline is perhaps still the very largest provider of sightseeing tours in the world. They have been in business for, I think, more than 100 years or something like that, um, uh, creating and operating experiences with their affiliates around the world in many different destinations. Since the title of this and the topic of this webinar is focused on end-to-end travel technologies around the travel experiences and how technologies can enhance those experiences for the customers, and I would say also for the businesses. Let me maybe just start with a couple of concepts that I would like to share as a general thought, and maybe also as a sort of a provocation. And the first slide that I want to just share is quoting an author that I've been reading a lot in the last few months, whose name is Vaclav Smil, who's a scholar focusing on the world of innovations. And in his books, Smil looks, let's say, very skeptical at the notion that we're living in an unrivaled era of innovation. And essentially, based on his analysis, which is based on many different fields and many different industries, he somehow concludes that our current era is not nearly as innovative as we think. In fact, he says that it shows unmistakable signs of technical stagnation and slowing advances, even with regard to artificial intelligence. But in any case, I believe that besides whatever consideration, is essential to take at least as Mill's advice, which is about avoiding the risk of treating every new technological innovation as a revolution. Instead, we should approach this type of discussion with a very clear mind and steering away from creating unnecessary hype. And the second thought information that I also want to share is basically captured in this other slide, which is, I think, quite interesting because it's a map which compares different industries with regard to the state of digital innovation. And as we can see, the travel industry in particular is still characterized by what in this slide, in this analysis, is called inertial approach. And mostly because the travel industry, as I think we all know, is highly fragmented, very complex. It has numerous stakeholders involved in different stages of the travel booking processes. It needs to coordinate different technologies, and also in terms of adoption across the diverse sectors can be very challenging, especially when there is a lack of standardized processes, and even I think a problem around interoperability between systems, maybe between legacy systems and new systems. So, for the nature of our business, I think of our industry, sometimes we need to also take that into account very clearly. So, based on these premises, and very happy to be also challenged by you guys, I maybe would like to start the discussion with you, Mark, from your technological provider standpoint, because being a tech provider and dealing with a very, I suppose, diverse set of operators, we're talking about different sizes, different regions, different needs. It would be maybe interesting to hear what's your perspective on how you are seeing our industry evolving with regard to technological innovation, technological adoptions, and everything that is around this topic.
Y- Yeah, I think I start with I full on agree. I mean, fragmentation is an issue, will always be an issue because what tourism activities are is an assortment of a lot of different verticals that is basically not flights and hotel. Uh, in a technology space, that means that there is no like one system to rule all those verticals. There are so many different operational procedures, so many different ways to do business and how to interact with the customer from an operational standpoint that you cannot cater for all of them. I think what drives innovation is the consumer. The consumer expects a certain type of interaction with him, which we are to a degree terribly lacking these days, which starts with simple operational things like how do I communicate? I booked somewhere. How do I communicate with an operator? We, as a booking system, in the end, we try to bring everything together. Our customer is the supplier, but the technology we build is often or mostly focused around we try to help our customers understand the future, what we believe a consumer, a traveler expects from them as a service provider. And the last point where I end with is I will contradict the fact that I'm a technology provider. I always try internally to say I'm a service provider, basically service provider facilitating technology that I provide because technology alone doesn't solve the problem.
Which I think it's definitely a very key point. So the fact that we're not serving, I'm speaking in this case, even from the Vox Group side. I mean, we're not really just providing a technology, but we are definitely caring about whatever needs to be done for the final customer. So if we don't understand the customer, if we don't understand the behaviors, if we don't understand the funnel, whatever technology we have is not going to be enough, or it's not going to be even understood by the operators that need to be the ones using it. But just let me further ask you about how difficult is to make operators understanding this. I mean, is it becoming easier? Is it become pretty much as it was? I mean, it's still the same as it was in the early days. I mean, how do you see that from your standpoint?
I mean, it's easier to find your thousandth customer than it is to find your first one. So of course you have an uphill battle on a constant level. To convince the first one back in 2008, we started off with, okay, let's exchange paper tickets on the street with something digital. And at that point, it was like, what the hell you're talking about? Why should I? I mean, today you have regulation that supports, you have understanding from a customer, how they expect a seamless experience to work, all those things that support you. So yes, it's easier to sell. Nevertheless, this resistance to change, often some of you talked in your intro email back then about the inertia, so to speak. It's like comfort and familiarity with what I do right now. Is this thing cost of change or sunk cost consideration of technology moves fast. Maybe something you built 3 years ago is outdated today. You need to basically, if you want to be on the forefront, technology means investment, consistent, and change. And sometimes consumer change, that means to a technology change. When we started in the early days, I started and said is understand your business as an entertainment business. And a lot of times that was confronted because our first vertical we worked with was Hop on a Buff. And a lot of those guys and women were first and foremost bus operators. They were having a huge fleet of buses, and I also do hop on, hop off. There were some leaders or some innovators who started more with the sightseeing approach of it. They got it, but I had a lot of discussions where basically I was considered a cost aspect as a technology without understanding the impact technology will have on how you interact, find, and provide the service to your customer. So it is not the easiest game in the world because still what works today kind of will still work next year. So why change? So we are not, there are some who work easier, but it is constantly the customers, us as travelers, as a collective, help us to push our suppliers over the corner to adapt a decent technology solution.
Makes sense. Griffin, so speaking about operators then, so Greyline is one of the major
Yeah.
on-ground experiences operator
Uh-huh.
around the world. So what are the key ways you're using technology within your affiliates to enhance what they do, what they can do, especially through the funnel, thinking about also in destination experiences, and also how you as Gray Line are somehow supporting
Yeah.
them in order to understand what to do next.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, basically, Grey Line's fundamentally an association of independent operators, okay? And I guess we try to bridge between our technology partners like Palaces, Tour CMS, and the operators, because I think the operators tend to hear about forms of technology, what they should be doing, but they don't get much how to do it, right? And it's not their specialization is operating tours, and I think we expect a lot from them. So recently we've been working with a lot of operators in terms of explaining to them more about AI, how they can use AI, particularly in terms of just kind of efficiency of their operation that then frees them up to give the customer the service. An area where I think AI can actually really help operators give a better service to customers is utilizing AI to basically dive into the data of user reviews, which operators have across so many channels. And we've recently just signed a partnership there that will allow us to dive into the data of our operators' reviews across all of their different channels, so their direct channels, OTAs, other forms of distribution, and basically look for trends within those reviews, and then also have it at a global level so we can then explain and give them data at a global level. And I think that will really allow them to spot. I think previously it was hugely time consuming to do that and get real actionable, but they could get actionable data, but not at a scale they'd need to really take data driven decisions. And I think it's a big game changer being able to do that for them efficiently. And I think it will allow them to optimize and evolve their existing products, but then also what we do as an organization is share data to allow different destinations to look at what's working well for a product they could consider operating in their destination. And then at the same time, kind of on the review topic, also encouraging them to, I guess, collect more reviews, right? So we also signed a partnership recently with Magpie, for the obviously the data-driven piece, and then also with TripAdmit for basically the review collection. I think getting I try and always put myself into the shoes, and I get plenty of requests for reviews, and it's like I don't have the time. And we looked at TripAdmit and we looked at their data and really the guide working with the customer to collect reviews in real time. There's some really promising data there of how you can grow your reviews, and then obviously then use the data to dive into it. We're working with Mark and Palace's team and some other partners. I think an area of friction still in this place is around redemption, okay? And where people are, where the meeting point is, if they've missed the meeting point. Then another example, there's many tours where you may get off, you be on a tour and you have your own free time at an attraction, then it's a huge operational friction point of getting everyone back on the bus at the same time, right? So how can we use notifications? How can we communicate with the customers in real time and kind of use AI to drive some of that notification to improve that performance? And I guess I would say an area we're working on and looking at is also how we can get that real-time personalization, of particularly of suggesting products. Okay, a lot of our licensees operate hop on, hop off, and it's a big area that Mark and the Palaces team have been looking at, of how, when you're on the circuit of hop on, hop, can you suggest the right products at the right time that will basically complement their hop on, hop off experience. Or maybe on a tour, often tours are really a package of different items. Maybe a consumer will at the time of booking look for value, but then actually once they're on the tour, do they actually want to add the lunch option? Do they want to add the dinner option? And how can we, I guess, and this is a big piece Palaces have been looking at, is how they break down the individual elements of the tour so you can upsell those elements at the correct time and allow the customer to have a much more tailor-made experience.
Nice. I mean, I like very much the concrete approach that you are setting up with your affiliates. So that's absolutely very interesting. So now, Sarah, from your perspective, which is obviously a very different type of perspective, because I mean, as Viator, you are managing, let's say, an entirely different funnel, and I would say even more than operators can do, also controlling a lot of whatever happens between you as a source of information, as a source of products, and the final customer. So how do you see from your end, let's say, the enhancements around technology? Is there anything that right now, considering your vast inventory of travel experiences, you are essentially doing by adding up new solutions? We have been mentioning a lot AI-driven tools. So what's happening on Viator's side? You are on mute, Sarah. Your turn.
Am I good?
Yes, you are.
Okay. I just want to go back to something that you said at the start, which I think is really interesting, and I want to celebrate about our industry, which is the level of fragmentation that makes it very hard to get people online. But the level of fragmentation in our industry is a function of the fact that the majority of people who offer experiences are small businesses who serve fewer than 1,000 passengers a year. And from my perspective, that's what makes this industry special, because there are so many unique and small operators who are providing these sort of great, wonderful local experiences that you can't find anywhere else. And also, of course, as Mark said, that makes it challenging to serve all of the needs. And then the second thing I want to point out or acknowledge is the point you made at the beginning about the hype around things like AI and personalization and the use of data and big data. And we at Vital feel sort of a similar way, which is we take a fairly pragmatic approach to the adoption of new technology. I think that everybody in our industry is talking about personalization and striving to achieve it. But when we look at big data and analytics, those technologies have been very useful for sectors that generate high velocity, high information, high data and frequency, such as, say, a supermarket chain. But when it comes to travelers, we just don't have the same level of information. And, Griffin talking about like getting reviews and using reviews to get insights into what customers think. I mean, unless somebody leaves a review or interacts with our app or calls our contact center, then we can't really close the loop on that customer. And so whilst we would, it would be our vision to offer hyper personalized experiences to people, we're very far from being able to do that at this point. So some of the things that we are doing is that we, instead of trying to use our own data, we of course have access to TripAdvisor's vast catalogue of data from reviews, or 1 billion reviews celebrated in the last year or so. But we also basically take the pre-existing data and information that's available in large language models, and we augment that with AI to truly understand our products, and using sort of text-based analysis to understand sentiment and intent from reviews, to understand our products very deeply so that we can understand, say, the content, what you're going to do, anything from text and images that will give you better signals about what the experience will be. And then we use that first and foremost to introduce customers to a product when they come to our site. But then subsequent to that, we begin to use the data that they're using on our site to the things like, what things do they interact with, titles, etc. And so we have been able to offer what we call personalized sort. So when somebody has come to our site and they've interacted with a few products, the products that they see will begin to reflect the interactions that they've taken on our site. So Claudio, you will have a different experience than Mark and then Griffin based on the things that you've done with us. And then I guess the last area that we're exploring, which I think is the most important for what we're doing in this industry, is the move from keyword search to semantic search, and to being able to understand, instead of, delivering a direct result of a keyword, understanding the sentiment and intent of a customer to try to deliver something that is more personalized to them. But going back to your point about hype, we're far from being there.
Interesting, very interesting. So, speaking about data, which is obviously something that is at the center of whatever we do, especially when talking about technologies that can have an impact on the final customers or an impact on whatever touch point within the funnel. I've been very, very impressed about some of your also recent collaborations with some startups. So becoming more and more involved with I guess an open innovation type of approach, which is also something that it's I think quite interesting from your standpoint. It might actually be very interesting for many other players in the same industry. So I want, if possible, to hear a bit more about it because I think it's quite unique what you have been doing recently.
Yeah. Well, so I think all companies, no matter what industry they are in, have a culture around their product, their R&D and their product development process. And some are very much, we build everything in-house. Others are sort of the opposite end of the spectrum, which is that we partner with multiple people to drive innovation faster. And so Vital has traditionally been in that sort of that end of the spectrum, which is that we build everything ourselves. But what we would like to do is innovate more rapidly. and we would like to provide what I call, and what my vision as the head of supply and operator relationships at Vital is, to provide value beyond bookings. And so people come to OTAs for one reason: they want bookings, they're looking for demand. But if we can provide value beyond that, we hope to be able to be a better partner to our operators. And so some of the things that, we try to then strike a balance between what are the things that we want to own and that we believe we can do best, and what are the things where we want to offer solutions to our operator community that we maybe don't, we can't move fast enough, we don't have the internal resources to, flip on a dime. And so Walkway is an example of that, which is a company that enables price comparison and price recommendations for operators. And I think everybody on this call knows that operators find it very challenging to set prices for their products. I think a recent Arrival survey showed that over 70% of operators set and forget, so they have one pricing schedule for the entire year. There's this big movement in the industry towards dynamic pricing, and so in order for operators to actually have market intelligence that helps them understand how to price their products, we've partnered with Walkway to do that analysis. Similar to, I think it's what's it called? It's the company that does the price recommendations for Airbnb or for short-term stays. And so, in fact, the people from Walkway do come from Airbnb. So that's one area that we're working externally. The other one is we're working with Google to create what you might think of as an Uber-like experience for logistics. And so, I think, Mark and Griffin pointed out that day of experience. So we know from our customer contact center, where we've served billions of customers. We know from the contacts that logistics is the number one reason, or the number one pain point for travelers. And a lot of that resides in: where am I being picked up? What time am I being picked up? The product description says between 7 and 8. Where is my driver? Have I missed my driver? Those are the reasons people call us. And so if we can show in our app where a driver is in terms of picking people up, most people in the world now are accustomed to that kind of interface and that kind of experience. So we're working externally to do that because, again, we don't necessarily have the internal expertise and we want to move fast.
Very interesting. Mark, since you are working, let's say, as a bridge between the two sides of, distributors, large distribution channels, and operators, I would like to hear your thoughts about what Sarah has just shared about, the enhancements from the OTA perspective in terms of adopting these type of technologies and understanding how those technologies may even enhance your side of the business, of the value chain, and in any case, potentially enhance also the operators on the other.
So, as I say, it starts with the experience we want to give to the traveler. As I alluded to the fact that me as a traveler, I have my Uber-like experience I want to have. I'm exposed many times about those pickup problems, stuff like this. As an industry, we do a terrible job, as in offering and talking to the customer, because it's about protecting my data here and I shall not talk, it's my customer. In the end, we tend to forget the fact that the customer has, in the end, sorry for the word, a shit experience. They're nervous at that point. Obviously, pickups are done. We have certain types of communication. We're talking about standardization. But nevertheless, far from pickups are not everywhere. But then it's in a hop on a bus where we're big. It's just simple things like, where is my next bus and when does he get here? And where do I get off? I mean, we talked about where we started off as a company back in 2008 was, we believe in topics like a booking fatigue, but we believe that booking will happen in destination. But in destination doesn't mean offline. This is where often people go wrong when they think of it's still, because yes, there are those 3-4 killer things I pre-book, but a lot of things are, you want to be spontaneous on your holidays. Now this builds a lot of pressure now. Our core vertical is hop on above and we launched we called it back then in 2010 a partnering solution. So you and your fellows within the destination work together. A complete disaster. Nobody wanted to work with each other because it's my product, and otherwise the other guy loses it, and all that kind of stuff. And back then, connectivity wasn't there. Now, going through changes with COVID, everybody moving a little bit, especially in the attraction space, more kind of slot based. The demand for having connectivity and offering the right product at the right time, this is what drives. Again, this is now in regards to Sarah's question, this is where we have the information. That is the same for Vitor or all the other OTAs. We are happy to partner with whoever to provide that data. Sometimes it's just a little bit too hard to, because as a customer in the end is there, if you think if today as an operator you want to solve it, is the comms issue of talking to 7 different extranets and other things, is this a topic of the rest tech, is this a topic of its standalone other companies? If you talk to my operator, it just says, okay, so everybody wants some money for some mess that you created just for that. In the end, we're just doing not necessarily a great job of solving that. And this is always my starting point is put yourself into the shoes of the traveler. All he wants to know, he gave, and to be fair, most of the time they don't even care to who. They gave someone, most likely these small little mom and pop stops who give him the local experience. They want to make a tool with them, that we are intermediaries, technology providers, all the shebang in the middle is quite irrelevant to them. Our goal should be is to make this seamless. If we do that, we have a reason of existence. If we do this, this is how I basically define my reason of existence as a technology provider. It's not about my brand, it's not about nothing, it's about me basically making sure. And in connectivity, as I always say, it's more than plumbing. A connectivity manager is far more than basically connecting this API endpoint to that API endpoint. It's about evolving in discussions with your partners to make the data set better, to push also OTAs into the direction that let's try to solve those problems, because I don't want to imagine how many gazillion calls Sarah gets in her team in regards to where's my pickup and you have just no information. So those are the things I try with. So I acknowledge all the points Sarah said. Unfortunately, as a technology provider in the middle, you're exposed from both sides to it, and you just go like, I would like to solve it, I can't just now.
How difficult is it to actually discuss about, for instance, you mentioned standardization or access to certain type of data, especially with OTAs? I don't want to be provocative, but just to understand if this is something that it's getting better, or it's still, let's say, a topic within the industry that we're not necessarily solving yet.
I'd always make a difference in between. I don't have a problem if someone doesn't follow a standard if what they offer me as an interface to work with is good and fulfills the needs. So I don't have a problem with Vitals or any of the competitions, let's say APIs that they have. It's more like if you have mid to low rand, very regional OT stuff like this, is at one point we are running a lot of the big operator volumes with our system, and at one point it's just like, don't reinvent the wheel. I mean, we've kind of, there is at one point it doesn't make sense anymore. So as a fallback standard, which is at least the bare minimum, is something, but I still say you can never specify a standard to a level of degree. I would like a connection between Viator and Palisades to be some sort of, because we want more. We want more,
Yeah.
basically. I suspect to solve the comms issue is something that I say a high volume operator with Viator wants to solve and wants to have solved. Why you maybe lose yourself into specifying too much into a standard, making it too complex for adaptation at that point. So I'd rather some sort of this, what are the core principles that we need to have covered, get everybody onto that, and then we can expand from there. While some sort of totally validating the fact that, I mean, for a lot of the OTAs, they invested a hell of a lot of money. Their technology is good, and at that point, some sort of is. I don't. It's not when I go at night to sleep, or when I get up in the morning, I ever think about the complexity Viator's API gives me. It's not. That's really not happening.
Well, we try to make it simple, but I think I agree with you on the point about standards, which it's really hard for us to, because we want standards to make it easier for operators and booking and reservation technology companies like Palaces to help their operators succeed, like be successful in offering customers service to their customers ultimately. But what we found with some standards, and standards organisations are typically very slow to generate standards, and then there's the sort of time to adoption. And then the second thing we found with standards is it's a bit of a paradox in what you said, Mark, because standards don't often meet the very unique cases, or they don't go far enough to deliver the things that we want to deliver and enable for customers as the end result. So there's a real hard balance between providing that sort of 80% of what's needed and then the 20% extra that makes it an exceptional experience. And that's one of the things that we work with, connectivity partners all the time to try to understand how to provide a better overall customer experience.
Of course, and you have always two sides. Some sort of, on the one side, you have what is the OTA's core interest? To have the data, the understanding of the tour or experience that you have at hand, sell it to a customer, find that customer, and give all the data required for operations to the operator so that the customer has a great experience. The operator, on the other hand, sometimes they consider this an expensive sales channel, sometimes they understand the meaning. For them, it's more about when they talk to us about the operation. Yeah, but why don't I get the phone number? Why can I not, or stuff like this? Because OTAs have no clear definition of who gives you what kind of data. So in some cases, here I need to call them, there I can email them, and in the third case I do this, and there is like some sort of, to us, the push from the operator side is more in regards to it's understandable now. They're thinking very operationally because they're an on the ground, boots on the ground operation. And the specification, as we are talking right now within the industry, is mostly around the booking flow and, let's say, the payload of the transaction, so to speak. While often an operator, even though that I don't consider it necessarily core piece of the standard, is additional operational standardization across different players that would what they would love.
Do you mean of different reservation systems or different OTAs?
Different OTAs. Different OTAs give you different set of informations which you work with, so to speak. As an operator, I would love that basically everybody shares with me that, because then I can build my comms channel based on that. Here's like some sort of, but this is where I always, as a tech provider, sit there and says I can't solve that, so to speak. Is I can always, and I will always express, or through my team, we will express what we hear from our customers. We have great relationships to all of our OTA partners. We will tell them, we try to bridge, but in the end, it's, as I say, it is a commercial decision of different companies on what you offer, what you do, and where you focus your time and money on. And that's totally understandable.
Yeah, makes sense. It's a very big topic. I know it myself very well from my days with Amusement and TUI. So I appreciate that this is still a lot to discuss about between the different stakeholders involved. Let me just maybe switch on another, let's say, part of the funnel. Okay, which I've been mentioning a bit earlier, which is, let's say, the real experience, on-ground experience that the final customer then has, because we have been spoken about personalization. We have been also mentioning a lot about the improvements with AI, et cetera, et cetera. So coming back to Griffin now from the operator's side. So how do you see technology, let's say, impacting? You have mentioned quite a few partnerships that you have been establishing in the last few months. But how do you see traditional guided tours, traditional sightseeing evolving in this more tech evolved ecosystem, both from the operator's standpoint and obviously with regard to whatever is used, practically, concretely used by the final customer, because we always need to also face what the customer is using. So is it their phone? Do they like to download more apps, et cetera, et cetera? So I would really like to get your perspective on this.
Yeah, Claudio, I'd say for tours, right? I think the guide virtually makes or breaks the quality of a tour and how good it is, right? It's that human connection, it's that storytelling, okay? And I've sat on both side of the table of an OTA as now, working with operators, and I guess what do operators have? They have this challenge of training and getting good guides, right? It's not easy in some places, okay? And then also the languages of guides can be a big barrier, or have been quite a big barrier to entrance into certain markets. The work you guys have been doing at Vox, and obviously we've spoken about it a lot, I think it's incredibly exciting, because if I'm an operator and I've traditionally done English language tours, because I've got guides that I know, that I've trained, that I've got doing it in the right way. I trust their storytelling and personalization because they understand the customer that's in front of them that day. I think that with real-time translations, it's a game changer, right? If we look at how could you, and we had this problem when I was at Expedia, right? We want more tours in Japanese, or we want more tours in Chinese. It was really hard to get. And you'd speak to the operator, and even for some European languages, no, Griffin, it's too expensive. There's too much of a risk. I'm going to have low occupancy on that. That you can combine all those things together and still utilize guides that you trust. I think it's going to be a game changer for this space. So congratulations to you and the team. And then I would say, relating to this, I think audio guides have become more and more prevalent, and I think AI is going to change the games for that as well. That you can we've got some of our licensees working with partners where they give it's basically they add a persona to it, and the persona can be relating to the attraction being visited. It can be relating to how they want their company presented, and that there can be, I guess, not just what was audio guides before of you get here, it might be in sync, we're going to tell you this. You get here, it might be in sync, we're going to tell you this. It can evolve, and the customer can communicate back with it and basically ask questions. And I think the opportunities for operators with these technologies is very, very promising, and I think will really help the market evolve.
So I agree with you. If I also may summarize, so basically we're saying that at the center of the experience that there is always, let's say, a real person, or at least something that can feel, the connection between human beings. But
Yes.
on the other side, technology is finally, giving us tools to enable extra things that we can add up to facilitate certain areas, including, like, for instance, with AI, the possibility of translating automatically on live, automatically real time, whatever language the guide is speaking. I do believe that this is definitely what hopefully we will see in the future, which definitely enhance, let's say, the human component. It's not really replacing it. At least this is my
No,
perspective as well.
100%, Claudio, right? If we
Uh,
look at a product like Hop on, Hop off, I think for a period of
right.
time that moved to be just the audio guides in some markets, but actually the customer wanted the live guide back, and many
Yeah.
operators have basically put that back on because they wanted that real-time experience. And if we look at certain markets, we're saying, okay, that English-speaking customer gets the great experience, but if I'm Portuguese and I don't speak English, I'm still listening to my headset. Whereas the technology will now evolve that, and I think it's incredibly exciting. And yeah, that I don't think that human touch is ever going to go away. It's how we can use the technology to optimize that and again delight the customer and refine to the customer, because I personally think the very best guides are the ones that are able to read the customers in front of them and basically tailor the experience to those customers. You're on mute, sir.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Um, Sarah, on your perspective, do you see anything relevant in the customers' behaviors right now, or even what operators are doing in order to do things that may provide this, let's say, extra tech-enabled experience, or is still something that is very much not happened yet at a certain scale, obviously.
Yeah, so what we, well, let's take some external data. So this arrival report that I mentioned
Yeah.
showed that, you know, like fewer than 10% of small operators or medium-sized operators are using AI or enhanced technologies to support the customer experience. And in fact, only 40% of enterprise people like Greyline are using those technologies. Where we do see operators using technology is more in the space of customer support and in efficiency of operations. And so, for example, contact center, you know, introducing contact center chatbots, training those chatbots on information that they have from their businesses, which gives then a better customer experience and a much more efficient experience for the operators, so less cost. And then, so that's in the customer support side of things. And then I think they're using, you know, what I see, if I look at somebody like Christian Watts at Magpie and then other companies, what we're doing, and it may be the case with Mark as well, is they're using AI to create more marketable product listings and to differentiate their products more. And so these are more internal operational and marketing things as opposed to I see that more than I do all changes in the customer experience, except for maybe from large enterprise companies.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, guys, we're running a bit late, so just to close up the session, very last question to all of you, maybe starting from Mark. So let's say in that's a very typical question, but like looking ahead, so 5, 10 years or so, do you actually see anything happening from a technology standpoint, like any emerging thing that we haven't even mentioned today? So besides AI, or even about AI, whatever, that you believe is going to have some sort of very profound impact on our industry? Or you see a situation where, as it happened also in the past, we're evolving step by step, as we all hope in some ways. But I'll let you maybe, with a final statement, all of you.
Well, I think what AI is going to give us is efficiency in how we operate. So I see AI mostly in the operational aspect of how we do or get the data that we have better. What AI has as an impact in regards to how we search in 2030, to be honest, I have no clue. So this is to be seen. This is something I just know. Will it be
Who
the?
knows? Yeah.
I just don't know. I think it's one of the things So yes, I went through the entire shift from basically physical guide and hop on above to just audio guide to now kind of AI enhanced guide. I think is one of the things, for example, I always envision is we see all those. If you look at the numbers of those immersive experiences and stuff like this, I think AR could be used in stuff like this as well to basically tell a history of a city or something, augment the experience, have a more immersive experience of the product itself, and then purely on a technology basis. Maybe a little bit boring, but topics of IoT and some sort of smart infrastructure on how we enable our customers to basically streamline their operations, capacity tracking, all those things, location-based offerings in real time. Those things, I think it's just the adaptation of it. It's not that it's a new tech. It's more like us basically implementing it properly, always in the mind of bringing better value, and in our case, bringing the right offer at the right time to the customer in the destination, or solving a problem or a question that he has at that point.
Yeah. Griffin, what about you?
I would say, look, I think as well as looking ahead, we need to better utilize technology that already exists. And I would say, from an operator standpoint, we should be championing better use of APIs, right? That maintaining products, particularly content, operational data relating to that, is a huge overhead still for operators that tends to also cause customer friction because you get human error there, right? That if we have people that have to update, I don't know, maybe 100, 150 different people, and I think maybe I'm going to get the year wrong, Mark can maybe help me. If I go back, like the API stuff evolved in the space in 2013, 2014, and there's been I'm not saying there hasn't been improvements, there has been improvements along the way, but we need to definitely help with some of that operational stuff for operators. And then I guess for us as operators, we have the involvement in technology, so we're evolving. We've got lots of operators who are having to upgrade their fleet to electric vehicles to be more green, to be more sustainable, and obviously there's big investments to be made around this, but there's also technology that's making it easier, where you can also look at converting vehicles to be electrical, to be moving ahead, and still making progress. And I think what my gut tells me is that the customer will also start looking for that a lot more. So we want to remain at the forefront for that as the Greyline organization.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sarah.
So looks like we're out of time. I see the clock is at 0, but very quickly. So number one, totally agree with you, Griffin. I don't think we're at a point where we leapfrog technologies that are underutilized today. Secondly, I'm a skeptic about AI trip planners. I don't believe that they can solve the discovery and the booking process, and I don't think that they will fundamentally change the way people find, discover, and book travel. And then I guess in terms of future, I would look at the financialization of travel, which is something that a guy called Gilad, an investor called Gilad Berenstein, has talked about, which is more non-travel companies coming into the travel space. So loyalty providers, card providers, and so on. And so this sort of evolution of the people who are involved in this space and frankly, who are trying to generate income from this space. So those are a couple of thoughts for me.
Yeah, very interesting. Very good points. Okay, guys. Well, thank you very much. It was a great conversation. I'm very happy about it, and deeply honored to have you on the panel today. So thank you very much, and obviously enjoy the holiday season ahead of us, and have a great New Year as well, if we don't see each other before. So thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Claudio. Thanks,
Thank you,
Sarah.
guys.
Thanks, Mark. Take
Thank
care.
you. Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Happy holidays.